We few, we happy few, we band of brothers.
Well, hello and welcome along to another We Happy Few 506 podcast with myself and my beautiful semi-German Berlin-based co-host, Doug Allen. How you doing, Doug? You look good in those glasses.
I'm very good. These are actually my sister's glasses. I left mine in London, so
Okay.
yeah.
What's your sister doing for sight?
She's one of these people that buys like 5 pairs of glasses at a time, so they're littered all over the house. So I just took a pair, and she won't be missing them. But yeah, I'm well. You look well, and I hear you've had an interesting day.
I have. In fact, quite a lot of our listeners will know this, that Seth, I can never pronounce his second name. It sounds like Wagowski, you know, from Monsters Inc. Wagowski. He's over. Little 23-year-old Boston PD fellas come over for a week to hang out. So I've taken him all around everywhere. I took him where we filmed Currahee. I've taken him all over everywhere. He ended up going to a chicken wing festival at the O2 Arena, falling in with a bunch of guys. Ate 32 chicken wings and was disgusted with himself. So I'm going to have to explain that to his parents. Anyway, we should crack on, Doug, because we've got an incredible guest on this evening. I know you were excited about this personally, Dougie. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast Ben Milligan. How you doing, Ben?
I'm great. Thanks, guys.
Good. I'm going to give you a little bit more of a better intro than that because yet again, Doug and I have to deal with an overachieving polymath whilst we're just two bums that don't get anything done. We're going to deep dive into many different areas of Ben's life and career, hopefully. But he is author of a very famous book, By Water Beneath the Walls, which is, when I wrote this, and I've just reread my notes, this is not a dad pun, and I do apologize. It's a deep dive into the Navy SEALs. Oh, really? I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I wrote it and I did not do it as a pun. Navy SEALs, which are the U.S. Marine Special Forces actions. Welcome to the pod, Ben. Sorry about the terrible pun.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. You're not the first to make it.
Really?
You had no option. That's the kind of the only answer you could have given. Thank you, Ben. A very warm welcome. I think everyone's going to be very excited to listen to you. I'm a little bit nervous about Matthew's questions. So I'm sure he's thought about them a great deal and has them written down, not on the back of a napkin or something. And
it's all good.
I wasn't nervous until you said that.
Things are better than they used to be, Ben. I used to do this from a build site when I was working, and I'd have things written on the back of a piece of concrete packet or a 2x4 or something. But it's got more professional since I stopped working in build sites. So if we break this up into sections, just so the listener can sort of chronologically map out you and your career. So your early life, I was fascinated by guys who end up going down the path that you've particularly gone down as a young man. At what point did you decide, I've got that spirit, I'm going to end up doing incredibly dangerous things underwater and above water? What drew you into that?
I was interested from an early age. I assume you're talking about when I decided I wanted to be a SEAL.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I was probably 12 when I got the first idea to pursue that.
Yeah.
And for a long time, it was the only thing that I had ever really thought about doing. And I think if you find something like that when you're a young person and you kind of are stuck on it, you will get to a point in your life when you've foreclosed a lot of other options.
Yeah, no.
So I wasn't
narrow, doesn't it, Ben?
Yeah, you're kind of like, even if I had, by the time I was in my late teens, decided that, I don't want to do this, anymore. I want to go be, a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Well, I hadn't taken school that seriously. And so I would have, been starting from, zero again. So I wasn't, and it wasn't like I lost interest in doing it, but, I didn't have a lot of options.
No, I'm truly fascinated.
The military, for a lot of young men, I think, the military is is great for sort of, sorting that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not.
it's fantastic. And the interesting thing is that so Navy SEALs. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can actually join the Navy SEALs because the Special Forces in the UK, you have to join the regular Army or Marines or
Right.
Parachute Regiment first. Do 2 or 3 years, and then you can apply for selection. So is that what makes the Navy SEALs unique in a way that you can actually just join as a recruit, right?
It used to be the way that you have it, and we did some work with the SBS when I was in, and that was one of the things that I was first struck by when we worked with them. Every Royal Marine Commando that wants to try out for the SBS, they have to do a number of years before they're allowed to even try out. Um, and I don't know how it is with the SAS, but with the SEAL teams, with that's when I did it, I signed a contract, before I even enlisted, that would at least give me a chance to try out. So I had to, there were a number of guys that didn't, make it past that first wicket. I remember being at boot camp with, standing in the physical line with somebody who had signed up under the same program that I had, which was called the SEAL Challenge Program, and he failed the eye exam. Found out that he was colorblind on the first day of boot camp, and they voided his contract, and he's still in the Navy. So I don't know what happened to him, but
Were you 18 at this point or not?
I was 20. I was 22, so I had gone to college. I hadn't done well in college, and I hadn't gone through college with any sort of plan or career in mind other than this. So, and when I applied for officer candidacy school, which is OCS, and that would have taken me on the officer track. I was accepted to OCS, but I didn't get the guarantee to go to SEAL training. So
You pulled
I pulled that application and I enlisted. So
yeah.
and that
It's
and,
quite
and
interesting.
I found that I wasn't the only person that had done that. There are a number of people that and when I got to SEAL training, and I looked around at the caliber of the officers and the various experiences they had. A lot of these guys were Rhodes Scholars or college athletes. I hadn't been anything. I was just.
That's what I was going to ask you, Ben. I was
Yeah,
going
I
to
was
say,
going to ask.
yeah, that you were part. What is it? Obviously you weren't a sports star or whatever, but was it an amalgamation of different things? Were you just good at a lot of different things? Were you just naturally tough? Was what is it that sets
I
you
was
apart as a SEAL? Because
It must be a mental thing that they're looking for, right? It's a particular character to never give up and to look after your fellows. But I think the point that Matthew's trying to make is that more so in the United States than anywhere else, the whole collegiate thing, you can really get through it on sports. I mean, it's a huge part of the American education system, really, isn't it? You have this whole thing, and you're saying that you weren't particularly, you didn't play for any college teams or stuff, but you must have been an outdoorsy type and a physical guy in any sense, or
Yes, to some degree. I mean, I grew up, in a family that liked to do outdoor stuff.
yeah,
We camped a lot as a kid, but to this day, I describe myself as an avid indoorsman.
right.
I mean, I like.
You really picked a career that's out there for your
I
natural.
know I did. It wasn't the best fit. No, I wasn't an athlete in any sense of the word. In fact, there was if there was one thing that was known about me in the SEAL teams, it was that I couldn't throw anything to anyone anywhere. I had no ability to catch things, throw things. I'm but I was a good trier at everything. So,
Yeah,
and I was a good. I've been a good high school runner. I don't know that I had a ton of talent, but I think I was able to dig into the red, and a little bit more than a lot of other folks. So I could run. If you'll give me 1 second, I've got kids that are walking in.
oh, don't worry, mate. It's my kid's bath time as well, man. Don't worry about it. It's going to kick off in the background.
Sorry.
Um,
so
really,
you're 22, you enlist.
Yeah.
And is the I don't know if this term is correct. Buds, is that a thing? What is that?
Buds is a thing. It's still called, and that's what it was called. They changed the name of it. Oh gosh, I can't remember. For the guy who wrote the history of the SEAL teams, I can't remember exactly what year it was changed from. The underwater. It used to be called UDTR, Underwater Demolition Team. Hey, bud. Training course, and then they changed it to Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL Training. So now it's a carryover and a nice nod to the history of where the SEAL teams came from, which was the underwater demolition teams. But it's it's a bit antiquated. But like I said, the instructors, that are still walking around, SEAL training, they still have, on their name, not their name tapes, but just below their names, it says UDT / SEAL instructor. So it's for a branch of service that doesn't do a very good job of remembering its history. The SEAL teams have made a real concerted effort to keep that UDT legacy alive, or the underwater demolition teams, which is interesting, especially for an audience like this. And we can talk about the history later, but
well, it's a nice way if you could just explain how they came about, like alongside your introduction of yourself going into recruiting. You mentioned it came from the underwater demolition team. That's what they were
yeah,
before it became the SEALs. What was this, a World War II thing, a Vietnam thing? Where did
yeah, it all, the SEAL teams, or the units that ultimately create the SEAL teams, or the SEAL teams are pulled from. They all start in World War II, and it's interesting if you put naval special warfare in context with all of the other units that are created, during this period. So you have the Army Rangers, you have some semblance of, what the Army Special Forces is going to be. You've got the Marine Corps Raiders. All of these units, Rangers, Marine Corps Raiders, they're all created from, the special units of other countries, particularly Great Britain. So the Army Rangers, they're first they're first trained at Achnacarry in Scotland by British commandos. Same with the Marine Corps Raiders. The Army Special Forces, they take a lot of their legacy from the OSS Jedburghs. Well, the OSS Jedburghs, they got so much of their training from the Special Operations Executive, which was also another British, program that was over other, various sub-programs. The Naval Special Warfare is the only institution within the U.S. military Special Operations Command that is 100% American made, American born. It started, with American guys just sort of figuring it out. Now, the difference between, the Rangers and the Raiders and, the Jedburghs and things like that, they didn't have they had some sense of what their mission was going to be. They were going to drop behind enemy lines, or they were going to go in behind the lines, raiding missions or things like that. Naval Special Warfare, the underwater demolition teams, the NCDUs, the scouts, they all had very, very specific problems that, needed to be solved, that naval planners were trying to solve. NCDUs, they had to, destroy the obstacles on the beaches in Normandy. The underwater demolition teams were in the Pacific theater. They had to find the coral and the underwater obstacles, and then they had to destroy it. Those were all things that were, problems for various amphibious planners. And so once they solved, those individual problems, they found themselves to be the only institution, that survived disbandment at the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
So, Naval Special Warfare, not only is it the only American-made, 100% American-made institution in SOCOM today, but it's also the oldest. It's, it hasn't, since 1942, there's been no break in continuity, whereas the Rangers were, disbanded in 1945. The Army, or the Marine Corps Raiders, were disbanded in 1944. Rangers are created again in 1950, but they're disbanded in, 8 months later.
The SAS were disbanded as well, weren't they, post-war?
They were. The SAS were briefly disbanded, and then they were rebuilt quickly after for the Malayan emergency. So,
what would you say was the main reason behind there being such a continuity? Has there remained a specific need for what became the Navy SEALs? Is there specific abilities always needed in theaters that the United States have been in since? Because I mean, if you
I don't have a great answer to that question. I don't know why Naval Special Warfare was never disbanded. I have a sense, that it was they had become so indispensable to the fleet's planners that I think they were just kind of loath to get rid of something that had done such good work for them. Now they did shrink it drastically. At the end of World War II, the UDTs have grown to 40 teams, which means each team was 100 frogmen, which means there were 4,000 Navy frogmen by the end of the war. And when they downsized to 2 teams, and they reduced them in size to 50 swimmers each. So they went from 4,000 swimmers to 100 swimmers, but it was at least something, whereas there were no Rangers, no Raiders, nothing else. So I think they just thought, if there is any sort of amphibious problem, we've gotten so accustomed to using the UDTs in all of our operations in the Pacific, it would be really difficult to restart that whole program from scratch. And such a small investment to keep 100 swimmers or 100 frogmen around, so they just kept it around.
I guess that takes away from the fact that you'd also have to retrain them as well, because if they're in service, they're constantly being trained and updated all the time as well. So they're actually
it was very difficult training, even from the very beginning. Like Hell Week, I don't know if you probably haven't seen any of the news over there, but we'll about every 6 months there will be another article in the New York Times about how SEAL training is too dangerous, it's antiquated, guys are dying in training and things like that. And it's true, it is very, very difficult training, and it's but we also have to remember we have the most data on Hell Week of any other training that exists in the U.S. military. It's been going since 1943. And we only have people die in training, not all the time, but pretty frequently. There's far more people have died in Marine Corps boot camp than have died in Navy SEAL training. I don't know that that's true. I'm just for an example. I mean, we have a lot of data on it, and we know that it works.
So what particularly
in commandos as well? The commando think we get fatalities, and it tends to be things like heat exhaustion and that sort of thing.
Yeah, right. Things like that.
Yeah.
But so you join so they're attached to the Navy, yeah? They're not attached.
The SEALs are, the SEALs are, and that's part of the reason I wrote the book, because it was such a confusing structurally. When I left the SEAL teams in 2009, and 2009, 2010, my last reserve function was in 2010. 1 year after I left, 2 major things happened in the world. One was the killing of Osama bin Laden, and the second was the crash of Extortion 17 in Afghanistan. Both of those events, the Extortion 17 is the largest loss of life for coalition forces in the entire war in Afghanistan. 17 SEALs were killed on it. So these are 2 major events. Both involve SEALs, and both occurred more than 600 miles away from the closest salt water. Now, I've only been out of the SEAL teams at that point for a year and change. And for some reason, these 2 events happening so close together, it really just got me thinking, like, how is this possible? How did Navy SEALs, ostensibly a special operations unit that exists for the Navy to do maritime missions, how did Navy SEALs evolve to the point where they are the number one chosen entity to perform some of the most dangerous missions, with absolutely no relation to a maritime environment at all? That's what kind of set me down this path. I'd been looking for a book idea to write about for whatever reason. That those things happening when they did, they just they determined what it was going to be about.
And so what then sort of drove, I know you'd gone back to school.
I did. I went back to school, but I had nothing, when I got my master's degree in I guess, '08. But I had not planned at all to be writing anything about this. If I had thought that I was going to write a history of the SEAL teams, I would have, paid a lot more attention and talked to a lot more people when I was in. I anticipated that I was going to be writing, a book about, the First World War or something like that. Um, and then when I, sat down to start thinking about what I was going to do, um, I realized that no one was going to buy or be interested in a book written by a guy who knew nothing about the First World War, who had no like touch point to the First World War. Um, I realized that I needed to sort of, sort this thing out in my own personal, history before I was going to be able to move on to, other history, or for people to see me as a credible voice in the history space.
Right, and I believe you took about a 10-year deep dive in
Yeah.
all directions to unravel the conundrum that you'd asked yourself as to why these Navy SEALs were in this particular place, and what were the touchstones hit.
I mean, it's a long story, and the way I describe it in the book is, half of the story is about how um, naval special warfare evolves. It finds these opportunities and consistently, is trying to be relevant, trying to be useful to planners. So they're kind of pushing the envelope at every phase of the history. So from World War II to Korea to Vietnam and beyond, these sailors, trying to be relevant, looking for work. They're just creeping, into various vacuums. But those vacuums became just as important as the opportunity, piece of the book. So as I was writing the book, and I was writing, about, trying to understand how, the Navy units were moving, into that space, I had to simultaneously understand why all the units of the Army and Marine Corps were leaving those gaps for the Navy to fill. So the book ends up being, half about the Navy, half about, naval special warfare and the emergence of the SEAL teams. And the other half ends up being about, Army Rangers and Marine Corps Raiders and, to some degree, British commandos and the SAS and things like that. They're without, the interaction between these units, I don't think that the SEALs would exist. If various units, if the Marine Corps, if the Army Rangers had established partnerships with the Navy and made themselves more available to Navy planners, the SEALs would not exist.
Right. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's an interesting point that you raise, I think, and it's something that the SAS had here in England quite a lot during the 1980s, particularly under Margaret Thatcher, and that is since the Iran embassy, which blew the SAS up. So the Iran hostage crisis, where you saw these guys rappel in on ropes and thing up and rescue all these guys, and it was on TV, and it was incredible. Margaret Thatcher realized, I think, the effectiveness of the SAS, and two, the sort of the PR value that brought to her as a politician as well, in some respects. And they became a very sort of very instantly famous unit, and also her sort of like, I don't know, they put out fires for her all over the place. And I think once that starts to enter the public consciousness as well, and I don't know if this is true with the SEALs as well, because as an English person, I'm looking at Navy SEAL movies and people playing Navy SEAls, and it's just like, oh, these guys are the shit. These guys are the best of the best. These guys are awesome. I want to know about their training. I want to know everything. And I wonder whether some part of that PR finds its way into the uppity ups or whatever, and it's like, well, we'll just send the Navy SEALs, even though, like, why are we sending the Navy SEALs? There's not somebody else that can do this.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, I was just kind of thinking, because I think one of the main reasons that Special Forces works in the UK is because we didn't have a great army, we didn't have a great navy, we didn't have a great air force. In 1940, we were struggling to keep going, and these ideas of these small forces kind of fitted the only things that was available to us. If I think of American military, it's the American military might, it's shock and awe, it's unbelievable force.
Yeah, but
and a huge amount of it. So in that scenario, where does the Navy SEALs fit in?
Yeah, but my point, Doug, my point was that and this is very much a sort of, I think, a modern day thing, is that sometimes you've got to market what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
do you know what I mean? It's like if there's a situation and it's like politically, can we get it? Can we do this? Like, if you send the force that people think are super, super cool or whatever it is, then it's like maybe that fits the situation, and maybe as a politician or a commander, you can manage the fallout from it. And I don't know whether I'm sort of like overstepping.
Do you think that has an effect, Ben? Do you think that the political power of having a smaller, nimble force of very highly trained, well-equipped guys is going to be more effective and, less,
I
you
do.
send an aircraft carrier with, you know what I mean?
I mean, we wouldn't have. I don't think we would have special forces or the explosion of special forces or special operations forces without the British and the British, and specifically without Winston Churchill. It was him that put the he was the first politician to use special operations forces, and he was doing it for a number of reasons. One, because the British were on their heels, trying to recapitulate a standing army after the evacuation of Dunkirk, but also because he knew that these raids on an enemy coastline would have a disproportionate impact on British morale. So everyone since then, politicians since then, have all realized the same thing. Special operations forces, they promise more with less. They promise a disproportionate strategic impact with significantly less investment from taxpayers, because they're taking huge risks, for long shot rewards. But there's also another piece of that. I think the planners of or commanders of special operations units, or the parent branches that have owned special operations units, whether it's Navy, Marine Corps, Army, they have all tried to figure out how do we keep these guys from either going off the rails or getting a disproportionate amount of attention. Nobody wants these special operations units to take away from the contributions of other units, but it's very difficult not for these guys to make a big splash or be attractive to the public. There's they are doing missions that are they're attention grabbing, they're headline making, and it's difficult to and not only that, but they've completed training courses that most people just can't do. I mean, some of these training courses seem impossible. When you really look at what BUDS is, or what SEAL training is, just take Hell Week for example. I mean, you're starting Hell Week, or you start Hell Week on a Sunday afternoon. You're gonna finish it on a Friday afternoon. In that entire week, you're going to have about 4 hours of sleep, 2 hours on Wednesday and 2 hours on Thursday. It's not 4 hours a night. It's 2 hours on Wednesday, 2 hours on Thursday. That's the sleep that you're going to get for an entire 5.5 day period. That's impossible. Who can do that? Wow. And you add, layer onto that, intense cold, so much cold that, you're literally, your body changes to adjust, to the cold. Like you have tendons are shrinking and swelling, and your arms are, trying to keep away from your body, because the further your arms get away from your body, the less the clothes will touch and make you, you're literally changing, how people walk. It's that cold. And, add on top of that, the grating sand and, the potential for cellulitis and pneumonia and all the rest. It's an impossible course. I mean, and once the public learned about the course, how could the public not be, want to know more? It's fascinating, right?
It is fascinating, and I think, like, just to jump back to, well, Band of Brothers, and then also sort of like the airborne stuff. I think that they suffered from something kind of similar in that
Absolutely, it did.
incredibly sexy, and so you have the jumps into Normandy, you have these incredible guys jumping in, San Mariglis, these guys, these angels under, and it's just badass. And so what happens next? Market Garden. Now, Market Garden is an absolute disaster, but people want that. People want these like sexy guys jumping out of planes because it's really, really cool. And it, like you say, it's maximum crazy rewards for high risk. It's like small units. It
serves multiple purposes. You're right.
So this really does sound like it's a perception issue. It's a political tool, is what we seem to be getting at, Ben. That instead of taking a conventional aspect, you take this one highly trained unit that everyone admires, every man wants to be them, every woman wants to sleep with them, or whatever it is. They're super highly trained. I don't know, but they have this sex appeal that Matthew's been talking about, but they have this incredible effectiveness, and like say they can, the damage they do, they obviously strike fear into the enemy. They must do, but does that then mean that they they do become a bit of a political tool? I mean, what kind of missions are they going on in terms of like, so if I'm a SEAL team member, am I literally going on the whim of a politician now, or is there you know what I mean? Is there a bad guy at the end of this? I know the world isn't as simple as you know World War II, when there was an obvious bad guy and an obvious bad regime, the Nazis and all the rest of it. One of the problems with the Gulf War in the UK was, WMD, weapons of mass destruction. Did they find any? No, they didn't. What are we doing there then? Am I dying for a politician, or is there a real cause at the end of this? It sounds to me, from the way that they're talking about SEAL teams, that small, highly trained units are almost on the pinpoint of this. They can just be used at a whim. And also, because they're so small and nimble, you can deploy them just like this, right? You don't have to get a carrier group together, which could take
Yeah,
whatever.
I see the point you're making. I don't know that I would. It's impossible to disentangle war from politics. We know that. I don't think it's quite right to say that these guys are being used on a whim. Let's use the Bin Laden raid for an example. I mean, there was an intense debate between planners over the best way to deal. They believed that Bin Laden was there in Abbottabad, and planners had to decide, well, how are we going to get rid of him? They and the options were some sort of drone strike, or to send in a special mission unit to eliminate him. Obviously, the safer thing to do would have been to use some sort of drone strike, or some
heavy ordnance guiding.
Use a plane to blow up the the entire compound. But there's a political aspect to this. One, there's potentially people on the target that we don't want to kill, women and children. Planners have made those determinations before that the reward is worth the risk. So, but also, there's the potential that you could have killed Bin Laden and not really known that you killed Bin Laden.
Yeah.
Who would have been there on the ground to confirm that this person was actually killed?
So it's confirmation. Yeah.
Right. So there was a political reason, to send a special mission unit in to actually to kill him, to assassinate him, and that was to give the American people closure. And and that's not a small thing.
No, not a small thing in the context of 9/11, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge thing.
That does make sense. Yeah.
It's 11 or 10 years after this
that's right.
monumentally catastrophic event.
And just
world history.
Yeah, just finding remains that may or may not be him is just not enough for the American.
It's not enough.
No.
So there was a political aspect to it.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
That makes sense, Ben.
That's a perfect example, and very well eloquently put by yourself. Very understandable. I think maybe this goes back to your book when you're asking the question, what were the Navy SEALs doing there? is sometimes these highly trained guys, but they're lightly equipped, highly trained guys that are rapid reaction in out. Sometimes they find themselves at the sharp end of a stick where it's like, are we the right forces to be here? Or are we just where the army thinks they're the coolest guys? Let's send these guys. But we should have sent. Do you know what I mean?
I do, the one I give talks to various units now, and I always ask them to go through a few exercises to make sure, one of the points that I make in the book is special units can be used inappropriately on missions that are outside their scope.
Right.
The Rangers are used, inappropriately a number of times in World War II, and even more so in the Korean War. They suffer, horrible casualties in the process, and then planners ultimately blame them, for their defeat. And then they disbanded them, on top of everything else. So I always ask people to think about a few things. It's not if a planner asks a special, mission unit to perform a mission that is not a special mission, I'm not saying you say no to that, but you also have to understand that, this is outside of our scope. So I always ask, planners to think about why, special mission or special units exist. If it's not, to perform some sort of less with more type mission, it's probably not a special mission. But I also I always I kind of draw a triangle between the three factors that you want to always have in your mind when you're planning one of these missions. Like if you're sending a unit, a small unit, to hit a large target or some sort of target behind enemy lines, that target that force needs to be able to move in some sort of concealing medium, whether that's darkness or water or something like that. And in order for a unit like that to move through a concealing medium, darkness or water or something else, it has to be highly skilled. But because it's going to be moving through some sort of concealing medium, it also has to be very small. So if it's going to be small, it has to be very, very very elite, very well trained, disproportionately trained to other units. But because it's small now, it can only have an impact on a vulnerable force. Mm-hmm. So if you
but obviously you can't carry huge weapons, but a JTAC, right. Isn't a JTAC?
You can absolutely
special forces.
And yes, and that has sort of upset the triangle that I'm describing. A concealing medium has to be small and elite for a vulnerable target. The ability now of special units to get placed, or to get themselves into a position to bring in, large fire type or large ordnance type delivery systems. That does make the triangle not obsolete, but if you the triangle still holds because you're still putting that unit in a very, very vulnerable place. Yeah. If you didn't need them there, if you could just get the fire, the fire, there without them, then why have them there? I don't remember the question.
Yeah, no, but I was assuming. So then it becomes about something different, doesn't it? Because then it becomes about surely, because to me, just as a completely novice sort of observer, JTAC is one of the best, the most important positions you can do. So you're on call in firepower, air power, on call artillery, and then the small force becomes about protecting the JTAC and protecting themselves. You'll have a medic, you'll have, they'll have their weapon systems, their personal weapon systems, the whatever machine guns and long guns or whatever they have. And doesn't it become, because that's such a valuable thing to have eyes on a base or anything, and you're calling on highly destructive you know what I mean, it becomes super invaluable. And I kind of thought that kind of role of JTAC observations isn't that the main role of these teams?
Role of the SAS in the British is observation, gathering information.
Yeah.
The the SAS that you see in SAS Rogue Heroes are actually commandants. They're raiding squadrons.
Yeah.
Yes, they do carry out missions, but embedding themselves in observation and then bringing in is the role of the British SAS, as far as I.
But so SEAL teams must be something similar, right? Obviously, like you gave that brilliant example of bringing down Osama. You needed that. So you have those, like, I don't know how to categorize them, but they're, highly important missions for closure or for maximum public impact for something very, very specific. But beyond that, what then becomes their major role? Is it observation? Is it, what else?
I say, I always say that the three missions of special operations are the three R's of special operations are recon, wrecking, and raiding. And I mean like wrecking, like destroying things. So that's the bread and butter. The three R's. If you get outside of that, then you start to, I think your shoulders need to be, tensing up around your ears when you're not doing one of those missions. Then you need to ask, why are you doing this mission?
Yeah. And is that what you do? You lecture to command structures? Do people come to you, or do you go to them? Are you employed in a way where you basically mediate between?
I'll be asked to give talks, and I won't ever presume to instruct anybody about what they're doing. What I will do is I'll talk about the history of what people have done before, and I'm very reluctant to ever talk about or use history in such a way that it's some sort of predictive for the future. It's not. The one thing that history does for us is it gives us examples of how other people have dealt with uncertain futures, and what's worked, what hasn't worked. And I can tell you, and I've been asked a number of times to give talks at various institutions in the military, and they have the pre-briefs and those and many of those talks is I've gotten directives to say how our next war is going to be with this country, in this type of environment, and every time I will say I won't say that, because we've had, and I can point to 30 years of history, or 30 years of historical examples where planners have said very, very similar things. We're going to be going to war with this adversary in this environment, and every time that a planner has made that prediction, they have 100% been wrong.
Wow.
History is it's unpredictable, or it's predictable until it suddenly isn't. And if you go back in time 2 years from now, or two years earlier, everyone was saying our next war was going to be in the Pacific with China. It was going to be moving away from counterterrorism, no more hostage rescue, things like that. And we're going to be going to a different security environment, national security environment. And then 2 weeks later, October 7th happened, and suddenly we're right back into counterterrorism.
Wow.
I'm not saying that that China or whatever, these great big adversaries that we are going to be dealing with for the next generation, they are entities or adversaries that we're going to be dealing with for the next generation. But in what environment? Are we going to be fighting over Taiwan, or could we possibly be fighting with China in Africa? Some sort of proxy war. Nuclear weapons have done an incredible job of keeping conflict at a at the limited war scale. Even what we're seeing in Ukraine. I mean, we haven't tipped that balance yet, and we are seeing incredibly unconventional uses of power. Go ahead.
Do you see a role for special forces in Ukraine? Could special forces help Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. They're helping right now, but just not in ways, or maybe in some ways that we've seen in the past, but also on some startlingly new ways. I mean, the smuggling in of drones on trucks to then release them on mass.
Option, wasn't it? That was fantastic.
Unbelievable.
My God.
Is that in your eyes? In your eyes, is that pure special ops? Is that pure like a unit like?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, and if special operations units aren't thinking about how to outthink from their last 20-25 years of experience into opportunities like that, then they're a dinosaur.
Right.
This actually goes back right to my first question. It's interesting because I've been sort of like trying to just glean as much as I can, but it feels like what maybe you apart as a SEAL and maybe sets quite a lot of special operations guys apart is this ability to think laterally quickly and think faster than the enemy. And maybe
Yeah, absolutely.
Sportsmen, because sportsmen tend to be terrible narcissists for a start and very selfish and don't think about other people. They're just highly focused. But it seems
one thing that makes me like it hits like a record scratch in my head is when I hear any senior planner using sports jargon to make a point. They say we're on the fifth 5-yard line or something like that.
Right.
They conceptualize conflict or war as some sort of sporting event, like we're trying to get a touchdown or something. It's like that's not what war is. And if you're thinking about war, and your metaphor for it, has boundary lines and rules and a ref, well, you're not trying to outthink
and equal size forces.
Right, and exactly. It doesn't fit. War is constantly changing, and you have to be as you say, thinking laterally, thinking and the thing that I would say that is the secret and the unpredictable benefit of BUDS, of SEAL training, is not that you're creating people that are really tough that can get through this training. That's what a lot of people think, this training is doing. You're just finding people that, have the ability to go 5 days without sleep and be, really, really cold and miserable for those 5 days. It's not what it does, because no one can do that. Right. No one can really do, what BUDS, what BUDS asks of you. The only way to get through BUDS is if your brain changes, because it's not just finding people that can get through it. It's making people that can get through it. It's making people, it's creating new pathways in brains to either begin to think about problems in a way that they never have before.
Right.
And, it's teaching you how to, I'm not saying cheat, because I've gotten in trouble, by saying that, you can only get through BUDS by cheating. But it's teaching you how to find those corners that can be cut. And that's what combat is. That's how you win in combat. You find corners that you can cut. You can outthink the enemy. And yeah, that's what you learn in BUDS.
That's really interesting. So and to do that, you obviously have to be very mentally aware of the surroundings, to do this little sneaky shortcut, to take a 10-minute break while no one's looking, to do this. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's the
That's
kind of, I'm going to catch 20 minutes of sleep while they're in chow or something, or whatever, or
right.
something that is not like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's those little things of self-preservation to kind of make you go, yeah. But these things take a mental capacity, doesn't it? It takes, like say, a particular type of brain. I guess that's what they're looking for, is an attitude.
Yeah.
It's
and there's different ways to get to it too. You don't have to put somebody through 7 months of, cold, wet, and miserable to get to that. You can put them through 3 weeks of, isolation and alone, in in Wales, the way the SAS does it, and you're still creating somebody who can adjust to circumstances, find little ways to squeeze advantage where they wouldn't have seen advantage before, and that's the point.
interesting.
No, I hate to use a sporting analogy, but Doug's gonna hate this. I'm a rugby fanatic, and all the best players, the greatest players, are all the ones that know how to cheat when the ref's not looking, and we can.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And they're just doing little things that are illegal. They should be penalty, but they do it when the ref's not looking. Really, really
interesting. Yeah,
it's little bits of advantage on the gain line. That put you ahead. And what's interesting, two things. One is it must be different for everybody. because everybody must be able to cheat in different ways,
Right.
just for themselves to get themselves through. And the other thing that really interests me is the instructors. So the instructors, who I'm assuming at the end of the day say, you pass, you pass, you pass, you're not going to be a SEAL. They must see that. And even though you think you're cheating them, they must see it and think, yeah, that's the type of guy for us. He's done this, he's done that. He just fell asleep on the side of a truck for 5 seconds on his back, and he's back in the game. And he's
Absolutely.
it's that really,
and you have to remember, they've all been through it too.
Yeah, exactly. So they know,
and they know, and the instructors are important in that environment, because they know they know the difference between a rule and a law.
Yeah.
They know which of the two can be broken, and which, what corners can be cut, what's honorable and what's dishonorable. There are ways to get ahead that we wouldn't necessarily think are the use of performance enhancing drugs, for instance. I mean, I think most people that get through that program would agree that is not an honorable way to get through it. But sneaking food into an evolution that is not, you're not supposed to have food. They anticipate that those kinds of tricks are going to be employed. They're looking out for them. They want you to do it in such a way that it's not obvious and that they don't catch you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the farmer's chicken goes missing on day 4,
there you go. Right.
What about, I hear a lot of stuff about various SEAL teams, and there's something that keeps popping up on YouTube and stuff. I don't know why. SEAL Team 6. What is that? A special team? What does it do? Do the different numbers designate different areas of excellence? What is SEAL Team 6?
They used to. So
something specific, or is it just nothing? It's just a name of a thing.
No. It's a real thing. And Naval Special Warfare Development Group is it used to be SEAL Team 6. Now it's Dev Group or Development Group.
Okay.
But Development Group, is when SEAL Team 6 was created, it was just another team, and each team had its own geographic specialty. So SEAL Team 4 was the South America team.
Oh, I see.
SEAL Team 3 was the Middle East team. There was a team for
team in Europe as well, isn't there?
Europe, yeah, absolutely. SEAL Team 2 was the team for Europe. And SEAL Team 6 was cut out as a counterterrorism team, and they were, mandated to be the maritime component for counterterrorism type missions, so hostage rescue and things like that.
Right.
So when the Achille Laurel, mission happens in the mid 1980s, SEAL Team 6 is dispatched for that. And it came up with its own, in SEAL Team, in order to go to SEAL Team 6, you had to, spend a number of years at a regular SEAL team, and then you had to, apply, you can go through a board system where your application, your record is judged by a number of folks, and then you're allowed to try out. And that I think it's about 4 or 5 months to get through what they call green team selection, and that's also a very, very difficult process to get there. So it is the premier SEAL team.
Wow.
And only the most experienced guys go to it. But like everybody else, I think they're struggling right now to find out what the next few years is going to bring for them as well. So it's definitely not more of I shouldn't say definitely, but it's not going to be like what the last 20 years have been, or 25 plus years now. So
like bar, that's what I call my daughter. SEAL Team 6 is her nickname. I won't go into the whole thing, but that's what I call her. Shortened to SEAL. Well, that's her nickname. It's short for SEAL Team 6. Whole thing. We've nearly had you for an hour, so I'll just ask you a couple of other things.
Oh my!
Then, did you tour the World War II Museum? Did you do a D-Day tour with the World War II Museum?
I have. I've done. I've done one. I'm set to do another one in October of 2026 with James Holland. So we'll be leading a tour together from
wow.
Paris to Normandy. I think it's a 4 or 5 day tour in Normandy, and then we river cruise back. And tickets are available for that now.
Yes.
And if you haven't, and
Where
as you
can
know,
people find, where can people find the tickets? Because James Holland is a historian that has his own podcast with
right.
Elmer.
Al Murray. Really interesting, and you're doing something with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to be. I don't know how they plan to break it up, but
Yeah.
I suspect I'll be handling, the Navy special operations portion of the tour, and he'll be handling everything else.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really great. Sounds
Yeah.
Oh, these tours are great. World War II Museum, the SEAL Museum, they do it just an incredible job. If you haven't been on one of these tours, they are. I don't know if life changing is too strong of a word, but it is they are really powerful. And if you want to know about your country, and particularly our two countries, Great Britain and the United States, you want to understand those countries, you have to understand, D-Day. You can't understand our future or where we are in the world right now without understanding this big thing where we, came to save the rest of the world.
Wow.
If you go to the
That's fantastically put.
if you go to the World War II Museum website, it's a World War II museum. If you go to, there's a travel section to travel tab, and it gives you a breakdown of all the tours. I've toured with the World War II Museum several times myself. I do the Band of Brothers one, so the Old Born to the Eagle's Nest. And yeah, I mean, I run a tour company now, so I don't know why I'm pitching the enemy, but they are incredible. It's like
I'd love to go on that.
and it is like it's not life changing. It's a bucket list thing. People
Yeah.
don't, oh, that was a bucket list tour.
100%.
They're in
I'm going to sign up for that. I'm gonna look into going to that next year.
Yeah.
I don't ever get the sense that World War II is competing with anyone either. Like you've got, your I have not found them to be anything but collegial. Like
Yeah.
when they meet other tour companies, they're always looking for partnerships, with others. Yeah, I think they're pretty great. So
Yeah, cool.
And do you have another book on the go? Are you researching the book? Are you writing another book?
I do. If I shifted the camera, you'd be able to see my pile of research materials. And I have to break off our meeting now to do another interview. But I'm not saying what it is yet. It's I don't have a contract for it yet, so I'm hoping to get the contract soon. But yeah, I've been at this one for now, I guess about 18 months. So
Wow. Well, good luck with it, buddy. We won't.
Thanks, guys.
You need to break off. Thank you so much, Ben. I just want to say thank you so much. You're fascinating, great talk, and it's been really.
Yeah, thanks ever so much for coming on, Ben. Hopefully, we get you on again in the future, and good luck with you.
I look forward to it. This was a delight. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, and look forward to talking more soon.
Fine. Thanks, mate.
You guys are the best. All right, take care.
Cheers, mate.
Wow, what a lovely guy, what an interesting fella.
Great voice, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's fantastic. I love the examples he used as well. I love that. It's just fun because it is really difficult to define what SEAL teams are, what do they do, and obviously, his questions around, where do they find their place in the future? If because obviously the nature of warfare has changed so much. I mean, these just drones thing, this seems to be it now. I mean, you wouldn't want to be any human in a place with drones around where you can't, well, you're not going to shoot one down, are you? They're tiny little things that race at you. It's nuts. The warfare's changed, and it would be interesting to see where what place they hold in the future. And I always knew, like probably you did, like everyone does, that yeah, okay, the British were the guys that invented it, and that the sort of the Americans were kind of. I didn't know it was. It seems like quite heavily based or founded on the SAS and the SBS. It does seem like, you know what I mean? Like they really came over, copied. He said they came to England, they came to Scotland and trained themselves.
By them, trained by
didn't know that.
Yeah, the Rangers trained by the commandos, and their special operations were trained, and it was all very sort of intertwined. I think is it their SOE? I can't remember. They were trained by it was the police chief of Shanghai or something. So basically, they looked for the hardest dude on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff Earth, and they found the police chief of Shanghai. There's actually a YouTube video of this guy training Americans, and he's got like a Zorro mask on because he doesn't want to be seen. And he's teaching them all this like hand-to-hand combat and all sorts of stuff. It's incredible. But apparently his caveat always was, so he teaches them all this like hand-to-hand combat and street fighting that he learned, you know, I mean, police chief in Shanghai. And at the end of everything, he would also say, and then kick them in the testicles. That was his. That's how to win a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
down.
Interesting guy. So it's refreshing in a way to sort of hear a Navy SEAL say, "Well, were you a sportsman at college?"
No.
No, not really. I was pretty crap at sports, pretty crap at everything. Oh, it's
Okay.
refreshing to hear that honesty.
I think he was probably being modest. He's quite
I
clearly.
think so as well. Of course. I mean, he must have had, because that, like you say, I mean, it's absolute hell. So,
Yeah.
and got through it and was, you know, served. So there you go.
He's just as fudge and very, very intelligent. That's why he's a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Interesting.
fine. Shall we wind it up for this week?
Yep.
Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. Thanks to our Patreons, and we will be back again shortly. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for listening. Ciao.